I really think we need to talk about the hardware specs upgrade that Xbox Series X really needs. Let's look into this. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I would like to talk about Xbox Series X Pro, or should I really say Xbox Series X upgrade, and I think that's a better way to put it, and I will tell you why in a minute. And I know what some of you will say now. MaDz, Phil Spencer, has already told you that a new Xbox console is not needed now. Maybe not now, but what about a year from now? What about 2 years from now? Especially once PlayStation 5 Pro comes out, right? I mean, yes, that console hasn't been officially confirmed by PlayStation, but there's so many different leaks from different sources, but that I really do think that PlayStation 5 Pro is coming out next year. So what about then? I mean, is Xbox ready for all the backlash about PlayStation having a more powerful console, like double the power? We're not talking about like 20% more power like Xbox Series X have over PlayStation 5, which still doesn't necessarily translate to 20% more better running games, if you know what I mean, for the most part. But still, like, you know, having such a big performance delta between Xbox and PlayStation, that would be even worse than PlayStation 4 versus Xbox One power, because that power back then wasn't that great. That it wasn't that wide, the power difference, right? Like the performance difference. But you know, PlayStation 5 Pro versus Xbox Series X, standard Xbox Series X, that's probably going to be a big difference in terms of like performance in multi-platform games, resolutions, graphics, who knows, right? So I don't think that Microsoft would want to deal with that. But hey, listen, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Xbox don't care anymore about consoles right now, right? Who knows? Maybe that's the thing. But I still think that Xbox need a more powerful console. Because, you know, PR and the whole power narrative is one thing, but we are actually looking at, we'll be probably looking at, if Xbox doesn't follow with a more powerful console, we'll be looking at people moving from Xbox consoles to PlayStation. I mean, I know for a fact that if PlayStation 5 Pro will come out, I will be spending more time, you know, probably some bigger multi-platform games on PlayStation, because the power and performance and better graphics is going to be there. I mean, maybe on PC, who knows, right? Like, you know, I will juggle that between my time between PC and PlayStation 5 Pro probably. And obviously all Game Pass games on Xbox, but or PC, right? I mean, but a lot of people will shift to PlayStation again. I don't think that Microsoft needs that either. But hey, again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they don't care about consoles at all. And maybe they care more about cloud and PC gamers. Who knows, right? But let's assume that they do care, at least a little bit, because, you know, some may say, oh, MaDz, but this is a huge investment and, you know, creating a new console. And this is where, remember at the very beginning of this video, I said that Xbox needs an upgrade, not necessarily a new console, right? And that's what I want to stick in this video. Now, I spoken about it briefly a couple of weeks ago, and this is not a new idea. This idea comes from Digital Foundry. They spoke about, you know, PlayStation 5 Pro back in the days a couple of weeks ago, and I forgot who actually mentioned that. Might have been Alex Battaglia, and he said that it would actually make sense for Xbox to create just faster version of Xbox Series X without basically investing a ton of money in chip redesign and the system redesign. It would actually make sense. Now, obviously, they would have to change few things here and there. You just can't magically make Xbox Series X, you know, faster. But I think it's actually no secret that all these companies they move from like, like for example, 7 nanometers right now to like 6 nanometers and 5 nanometers process later on. I mean, PlayStation did that already. We don't know nothing about Xbox. So PlayStation, like standard PlayStation, I'm not talking about PlayStation 5 Pro even. Let's focus on PlayStation 5 standard edition, like digital or standard, doesn't matter. At first, these consoles were produced on 7 nanometers process, right? Manufacturing process. Now, like a year ago, they moved to 6 nanometers, which means that they get more chips from the wafer, which obviously in total costs them less, so it's easier to produce. That console is more reliable because it uses less heat. Less heat means less breakdown. Less heat means smaller cooling system, which means cheaper console too. You know where I'm going with this, right? But I think there's already plans to move PlayStation 5 to 5 nanometers or something like that. I'm not quite sure. And it's just a matter of time when Xbox will do that too. So a little bit of change in terms of production and stuff is going to be needed anyway. But I think that they will need to do that for regular Xbox Series X and S anyway at some point in the future. So while working on that redesign, they may as well just use the same bloody chips, but just overclock them. And this is what Alex Battaglia spoke about, that they don't even need a new console, because in last Phil Spencer's interview, he did say that there's so many different technologies that are still not being used on Xbox, right? And I agree with that. Like mesh shaders haven't been even touched. Direct storage is still not used to its full potential. I mean, some parts of it is being used, but SFS, not a single game uses SFS. Like if they did, if developers if developers did use that, they wouldn't be complaining about memory issues on Xbox, right? But they don't use that. Like it takes time to implement all that shit. So I agree. Like I don't think that Xbox needs a new console, like a totally new console with RDNA 3 or 4 and a Zen 5 and whatever, right? They don't need that. All they need is pretty much the same console with same features, just produce that chip, right, on a smaller production on die, right? Process, sorry. And which means that, smaller chips, less heat, less electricity used. You can clock them higher. That's free performance. If the chip is smaller and produces less heat, it means that you can pretty much use the same cooling system, or maybe you who knows, maybe you want to redesign it a little bit too, who knows, right? But I don't necessarily think it would be necessary with Xbox. So CPU and GPU running at higher clock speeds would mean that you can actually get way better performance. Now we can debate what sort of overclock these chips would have to go through, right? Would 20, 30, 40% overclock would be enough? I guess that would depend on the manufacturing process, because the smaller die, the smaller process, the higher clocks they could actually hit. So with 6 nanometers or even 5, I don't think they can overclock that chip too much, but like going from 5 to 4 or 3 even, who knows? Like, we're not talking about this year, we're talking about like 2 years from now, right? It's possible. I mean, we could be potentially looking at like overclocked Xbox Series X by 40%. It's possible in my opinion. Now, if you have that, because you are basically using the same Xbox Series X chips. Now, obviously, not every single chip will be that fast, because there's binning involved. I'm not really going to go into that process, but you can pick and choose basically the best silicons, the most reliable, and you can use these silicons for Xbox Series X Pro, and the rest of the silicon, which doesn't pass the test, the highest test, can be used for Xbox Series X. That's totally fine. On top of that, that binned silicon, the better one, that would potentially be used for Xbox Series X Pro. Well, you can unlock all of the compute units. So that's like extra 4 compute units running at higher clock speeds, right? So that's like, 3 extra performance too. So in general, I think just like a simple overclock. And I know that it sounds simple. I mean, there's some engineering work involved too, like testing and whatever, right? But we're just talking about like pretty much producing the same chip. You don't change anything in the bloody chip itself. You just make sure that you overclock it, make sure that you pick the chips with all 56 compute units working, and you've got a 50% faster, more powerful console right there. And that would be advisable too. Probably Microsoft would have to invest a little bit extra money into faster memory chips. Same setup, same number of chips, same amount of memory, still 16 gigabytes, but make it a little bit faster. So we're talking about memory bandwidth. Like faster chips would mean better memory bandwidth. That would allow for better performance too. And so what that means is that Xbox doesn't necessarily have to invest a lot of money in designing new console, because that costs money and it takes a lot of time. You've got already tested, certified and everything, a chip that it works great. You just have to overclock it and make sure that it works. And on top of that, developers, you don't push a new console on them. You're just giving them a faster version of the same console to work with. And in reality, what you're telling them is, guys, you don't even have to really worry about that console that much, because if you optimize game well for Xbox Series X, that game that you just optimized for Xbox Series X will run on Xbox Series X Pro, basically with way more stable frame rate, or much higher resolution, or hey, if you want, you can add some extra features here and there, right? So that means that you are, like gamers get way more capable console to play with for next, couple of years. Developers doesn't really necessarily have to spend a lot of time testing for another SKU. And yeah, I guess that makes everyone happy, in my opinion. But whether Microsoft is going to go that route or not, like, I don't necessarily think that Phil Spencer is saying that, no, we're not really going to get a new console at all, ever, except new generation. I don't think that's, I think that, and there's been leaks about like different prototypes for Xbox Series S and X. So, Xbox engineering is playing with different ideas. So I think that, because some say that, Microsoft cannot just wait and react to what PlayStation is going to do, right? And I don't think they're waiting. I do believe, and it only makes sense, that Microsoft or Xbox engineering, right, is working on different prototypes for different consoles. And you know what? They actually did that. They did the same thing with Xbox One X. Phil Spencer, a couple of years ago, during an interview, he did say that they had 2 different prototypes. One prototype was very similar in specs to PlayStation 5 Pro, right? And they could have released it like a year earlier. But then again, they had that other prototype, the actual Xbox One X prototype, and they decided, like when PlayStation 5 Pro was announced, they decided to go with more powerful console, but a little bit later, right? So I would not be surprised if Microsoft had like 2 or 3 different prototypes right now, where they are testing different things and they are considering different specs and different designs maybe. I would not be surprised if they've got like couple of prototypes, not necessarily already working, but they may be on paper or whatever, right? And I would not be surprised if they will be able to make some decisions basically once PlayStation 5 Pro is out and they know what to do with it about it, right? I bet, but whether that was because, like I said, like I think even a couple of YouTubers, tech YouTubers were saying that Microsoft has been playing with different prototypes. I mean, some of them have been cancelled. That's normal if they think it makes no sense, but. There was even a prototype for like better version of Xbox Series S. So whether, but apparently it was cancelled. So it was using some form of machine learning or something like that. Better version of machine learning. But I think this particular project was cancelled. So we'll see, guys. Like I think it only makes sense to release a more powerful console. The only reason why Microsoft could actually potentially not release a upgraded console would be if they are already planning to make this generation a little bit shorter, which actually would make sense for a number of reasons, but I guess we'll talk about it in another video because I don't want to make this video too long. I've been on about this topic for like 16 minutes already, so I think it's enough. So guys, that's the video, that's the idea that Digital Foundry actually came up with a couple of weeks ago, and I actually agree with them. It's a good idea. So let me know in the comment section below what you think about it. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.